Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we are going to be talking about Tesla's Q2 delivery and production report. I know normally we'd go through these live, so we'll talk a little bit about scheduling stuff a little bit later on, but I do want to just jump right into the numbers here. Tesla delivering a record 466,000 vehicles this quarter, well above most estimates, well above analyst consensus, so a really strong number there on deliveries, and production equally strong, almost 480,000 vehicles produced this quarter. So we'll talk a little bit about, again, versus consensus, and quarter over quarter, year over year numbers like that. But first, just want to take a quick look at the S and the X versus the 3 and the Y split. So S and X production was about 19,500, deliveries about 19,200. That's really exciting to me because this is significant quarter over quarter growth. I think last quarter was about 11,000 in the deliveries bucket. So to see Tesla pick that up so dramatically quarter over quarter is really exciting and shows strength in that line, which we hadn't really seen so far, hadn't really seen develop quite yet. And with the cancellation of the right-hand drive, I'd kind of been wondering if maybe Tesla was going to be reducing production here, but that doesn't seem to be the case, at least so far here in the second quarter. So right off the bat, really happy with that S and the X number. And then 3 and the Y, of course, you're seeing 447,000 deliveries here, 460,000 produced, just continuing to be extremely strong. And of course, there's a couple of items there that we need to talk about, like some delivery downtime, things with Model 3 Highland potentially affecting these numbers as well, which we'll talk about. So I do want to look at some of the comparisons like I noted. First, analyst consensus, 447,000 essentially. This is a 4% beat versus that consensus. It seemed like most estimates were kind of in that ballpark. So this is probably the biggest beat that Tesla has had versus consensus for quite some time, which is really exciting. We'll see, what the stock does in reaction to this news. It's always a little bit tough to guess, but looks like a pretty strong number right off the bat. And again, I think I mentioned this, but records for both deliveries and production. So for production, this was up 9% quarter over quarter. Deliveries similarly up 10% quarter over quarter. The year over year numbers here look super, super strong, up 86% for production, 83% for deliveries. We do have to keep in mind, which, hopefully people add this context when we're talking about these numbers. There was some downtime last year in Q2 for COVID-related things, so not necessarily the fairest comparison when we're looking at these year-over-year numbers, but still, it does show, the progress that Tesla has made from where we were at in Q2 last year. As we head into the earnings report, obviously that's going to have impacted the earnings report last year as well, so we should be seeing a nice boost here in Q2 in the year-over-year numbers. All right, and then looking at the year-to-date so far, so I think we had around, 420,000 or so delivered in the first quarter, and a little bit higher than that on production. So year to date, Tesla has now produced 920,000 vehicles compared to their goal of deliveries of about 1.8 million. Their production is right on track. This annualizes now over the first half of the year to 1.84 million, obviously. And then on the delivery side, we're looking at 889,000 vehicles delivered in these first two quarters. So just below that 1.78 million annualized right now versus that sort of official target of 1.8 million. But Elon did have to say that internally they're targeting more like 2 million. So I think that raised the bar a little bit, but tracking really nicely towards that official guidance. So to hit 1.8 million for the year in terms of deliveries, they need to average 455,000 over the next two quarters. To hit 2,555,000, which would be, a pretty significant increase from the 465,000 or so that we see here in Q2. But this 1.8 million definitely looks on track. They'll probably end up somewhere in this range, which I think would be a great result for this year. Now, obviously, that is pending things with Project Highland a little bit, and how that might influence these numbers could affect things. But even this quarter probably had an effect and still tracking towards that. And then inventory, we'll talk a bit about here in a second. But people always bring up inventory, and obviously in this quarter, we're seeing significantly more vehicles produced than delivered. But just looking at the 920,000 produced year to date, 889,000 delivered, 96.5% of the vehicles Tesla's produced this year have effectively been delivered, even if that's some carryover from last year that ends up in these actual numbers. It's kind of the way to look at it. So I think that helps give some context on, almost all of the vehicles that Tesla is producing end up being delivered at some point. There's obviously going to be a little bit of a difference there between 100%. As Tesla scales, they need time to deliver those vehicles, so it's probably not going to be 100% unless they're drawing down from past inventory, which over a long period of time is not what's going to happen. That would only happen if you're not really growing quickly. So we'll talk a little bit more on inventory, but just wanted to throw that statistic out there as well. All right, so focusing in a little bit more on the production side, I've just taken a quick screenshot here of the sheet that we would normally go through because I think this is probably the most important part of it. So what's very interesting here, these numbers are kind of just estimates for this breakout between factories, but I want to highlight this June number for Shanghai because we don't have this yet. Obviously, we get sort of firm numbers with the CPCA reports every month, but we don't have that yet for June. And June is particularly interesting because there have been rumors of course, the Model 3 production line shutdown for Project Highland. So there's a possibility that we really didn't have any significant production from the Model 3 in June, and that's kind of what this scenario would be showing. If that's the case, then Model Y generally is a little bit lower than 60,000 or so. So if you just plug that in for June, that gives us about 222,000 from Shanghai, which this number is important because it kind of dictates how the rest of the numbers fall through in terms of how we would estimate them. So if you look at Fremont, it's usually somewhere in this 140 to 145,000 range. And then the balance would, of course, have to come from Berlin and Texas. And that's really what we're getting to when we're talking about this June number for Shanghai. Because if this is higher, if there was really volume Model 3 production in Shanghai in June, which we don't really think that there was, then that means a lot fewer vehicles coming from Berlin and Texas. If the number does come in a little bit more in this 55, 60,000 range, that means there's going to be a lot higher production from these two factories, which would be great in terms of how their ramps look from here. So we know Tesla has given us some updates on hitting 5,000 per week milestones at various points in time, but we haven't had quite as many of those this quarter, so it's been a little bit more of a question on how these are ramping. If this Shanghai number is lower, reflects a lot more positively. So kind of a weird situation, but when we do get these numbers in about a week, that will tell us a lot more about Berlin and Texas, and we kind of want these to be low because we know the reason for that being low, and if it is low, good for Berlin and Texas. So we'll come back to that, but just wanted to kind of highlight that as the main thing to watch regarding these production numbers in terms of the information that we will still get from this point. And then on the inventory position, one second here, guys, getting a call. On the inventory position, the change in inventory, as we talked about, it did increase again this quarter. We can see that has increased for the last 5 quarters in a row now. So significant increases over that period of time. Tesla would now be sitting on about 100,000 vehicles of inventory, which I think is why we go back to this, because that sounds like a lot, but if you're delivering 96.5% of what's being produced, that should still put you in a pretty good position. If we look at that 100,000 vehicles of inventory and we put it in kind of days of inventory, from the Q1 report, we can see how that's trended over time. So last year at this point, there was just 4 days of inventory, but now we've had this significant increase. So up to 15 days of inventory at the end of last quarter. With this new addition of 13,500 vehicles to inventory, this calculation, it only increases to 16 days. So although it looks like it's a lot, in terms of Tesla's actual delivery rate, it's really not too much of it. And that's why I was saying before, when we're talking about this percentage, as Tesla scales, it's very normal for inventory to increase in, association with that increased scale. Tesla's going to have more stores. They're going to have more vehicles that are coming off of the production line sort of at the end of the quarter that just can't be delivered. So although they could probably get away with a little bit, lower inventory than where they're at right now, 16 days, significantly below the automotive industry average. Nothing out of line there. And it's not even out of line with Tesla's history, really. It's maybe a little bit higher, but not anything crazy in terms of if you put it in relation to the scale of the delivery number, which is what that days of inventory metric does. So I'm pretty happy with that. It's always kind of nice to see Tesla deliver more than they produce because it really helps earnings and cash flow and all those things look really nice. But at the end of the day, as long as this is staying in a reasonable range, I think it's good. It's a fine and healthy number at this point. So just wanted to give some context there on the inventory position, because I know that will probably get a lot of attention on sort of the bearish side as that has built pretty significantly over the last year. But again, coming off of a very low base. All right, and then I do just want to quickly talk about scheduling here. So I guess last thought on the delivery numbers. Really strong. I'm very happy with them. Normally we would do a preview so I could kind of give my thoughts heading into this, so we've got some of that context, and hopefully this walkthrough of the Shanghai number helps provide some of that. But really happy with the numbers here. Excited to see the progress that Tesla's making. Hopefully now as we head into Q3, maybe this will be the quarter where we get this added a little bit, where we can get a little bit more information. Sorry for the background noise. And then one other item here, the earnings report, Tesla is scheduling that for July 19th. So Wednesday, July 19th, after market close, which is generally the, it's all good. Generally the period where we would expect that delivery number or the earnings report to be. And then just the last couple things on scheduling. So this week we will have the 4th of July holiday, obviously on Tuesday. So the markets are closed that day. And then on Monday, we will have an early market close as well. So just something to keep an eye out for this week with the holiday. And then one other thing, obviously this week scheduling has been very difficult earlier this week. So I do, as you guys should know, over the last 1,300 episodes, very much value consistency. So my apologies for that. Just some other things that have taken priority at the moment. But as soon as we can get back to a normal cadence, we'll do that. This upcoming week was supposed to be a vacation week for me. So still going to try to do some of that. I'll try to be on, standby for any major news, but again, appreciate the patience on that. And hopefully we'll be back to a normal sort of a schedule pretty soon. All right, that'll wrap it up for today. So as always, thanks for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast. And we'll see you at some point sometime soon. Thank you.